Wabash Carnegie Public Library, Oral History Program. Wednesday, July 11th, 1973, interviewing Gerald R. Red Smith, Wabash, Indiana, being interviewed at the Wabash Carnegie Public Library. Red, the first question I'm going to ask you is where and when you were born and your parents' name.
Well, George, I was born in Wells County, Indiana, July the 15th, 1905, which incidentally means I've got it coming up this week. My parents' names was John and Nellie Kunkel Smith.
Now, what did your dad do?
My dad was a painter at that time. We call him an interior decorator now. He primarily did the inside work in churches, murals and fancy decorations in churches.
Did he travel or did he work right around that hometown?
Well, he about the farthest away from home that he traveled would probably be up in Detroit and some towns up in Michigan, but mostly in Indiana, around Bluffton, Decatur, and farther south, down around Indianapolis, places like that.
Do you remember your grandparents, either on your mother or father's side?
I remember my grandparents on my mother's side quite well. They were farmers and had a farm a mile south of Tucson, Indiana, in Wells County. My grandfather was Calvin Kunkel, and my grandmother's name was Sarah. She was probably one of the greatest cooks that ever lived.
What did you do as a young boy? Where did you go to school, and your grade school and your high school education and so forth?
I went to school 2 winters out in the county while I stayed at my grandfather's house. The majority of the time I went to school at Bluffton. I graduated from high school at Bluffton in 1922.
Did anything unusual happen up until the time you graduated from high school? Of course, World War I would have come along.
Yes, World War I came along, and I joined the High School Volunteers of the United States, and found out that that meant I had to go out and work on somebody's farm for $3 a month.
Did you board with these people? Or?
Yes, that included meals, of course.
Anything unusual or anything about your high school career, or participate in athletics, dramatic society?
Well, I was rather runt in high school. The only athletics I participated in was the fact that I did wrestle in one of the first Indiana's high school wrestling meets at Bloomington, Indiana. That needs some correction.
Yeah, okay. How about your friends in Bluffton at that time? Have any of them gone on in state or national prominence?
No, I don't think any of us were too bright or too smart. We had our 50th class anniversary last year, and found out there's not too many of us left.
What did you do when you finished high school?
I went to Fort Wayne, and well, first I went to Grand Rapids, Michigan, worked a very short time in a plaster mine. In fact, when I say short, it was only a few days. And then I came back and started to learn the piano finishing business.
And what? For whom and what did you do with this profession?
Well, at that time at Bluffton, where the H.C. Bay Company had the largest piano factory in the world. They had 2 plants, one for the uprights and one for the baby grands, and they were turning out 110 uprights a day and from around 25 or 30 baby grands a day. That's a lot of pianos.
You stayed with them how long then?
I was with them several years, and then finally decided that I didn't like the finishing business, and went to Fort Wayne and started looking for jobs up there.
Doing what?
I worked at the, I was always interested in automobiles, and I worked for a Ford agency up there as a driving instructor for several summers, and then driving cars from the factory. Back in those days, they didn't ship them, you drove them down the gravel roads. And I was there for a couple years, making no money but having a lot of fun.
You weren't married yet?
No. Then in I got married in 1926, and my bride-to-be thought I should settle down and get a good job, so I went to work for the Traction Light, which was Indiana Service Corporation, and which is now Indiana, Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And doing what?
I went in the stores department, and I stayed with them from 1926 until 1945.
Mm-hmm.
I worked through the stores department to general storekeeper, from general storekeeper to purchasing agent.
And what brought you to Wabash then? That's about when you came to Wabash.
Yes, I came to Wabash in 45. Fella called me on the phone one day, and it was I'd been quite active in the Office of War Utilities during World War II, and the government had a man by the name of Fred Stevens, who was coordinator in the utility division. I've been working with him quite closely, and one day I had a call, and a fellow said, "This is Fred Stevens. I want to talk to you about changing jobs." And I told him that I thought it was the Fred Stevens that I knew, and we joked about it a little bit, and finally I found out that it was Fred Stevens, who was vice president of American Rockwell. And they were operating 8 plants, and he wanted somebody to head up their purchasing department, and made me a very nice offer. I came down, looked Wabash over, fell in love with the home that we have now, and decided to move.
What were your earliest impressions and reflections now as you look back on coming to Wabash? Man, what, 40 years old? And
Well, I like the looks of the town. I don't know why. I've always felt that small town was the place to live, and I felt that it was a good place to bring up children. Of course, I had a son and a daughter at that time that were rather young, and we found a place down here where we could have plenty of room, and the kids could have a horse, so it looked real good. And the job looked good. It was a challenge, and the salary was was better than I was getting, so it all added up to let's move to Wabash.
Yeah. How was American Rockwell set up and so forth in those days, and who owned it? And
it was a stock company. Sears Roebuck owned the Sears Roebuck, the Employees Retirement Fund, owned a great deal of the stock, and the rest of it was publicly owned. They had a good stock option plan for the employees. Probably the finest group of people anybody could possibly want to work for.
who were you working with when you came down here in 45? The personnel?
Personnel, Paul Cairns was vice president and treasurer. Mel Koenig was comptroller. Ernie Clark was personnel director. Of course, I had charge of purchasing. Shorty King, I can't think of Shorty's first name anymore. Harold was traffic manager for the 8 plants, and the executive officers, that is the president and the other office, sales manager and executive vice president, were located in Chicago.
The company itself was here for what reason? Why was the Rockwell business here in Wabash?
Well, originally, somebody got the idea that the Indiana silicious limestone, which is a very soft limestone, would make good Rockwell. It had its disadvantages, and in the last, probably 15 years, very of it, as little has been used due to the fact it had a very high ignition loss. There's an inherent moisture in the limestone, and with the price of coke, which is used for melting, it meant a lot more coke. In other words, you were talking about maybe a ton of coke to melt 3 ton of rock, and by going to a blast furnace slag, which was a waste product that the steel mills would practically give away, it had almost the same chemical analysis. It made a better grade wool, and you could get about 10 tons of rock out of a ton of coke.
Was this considered a big rock wool plant, as plants go?
Yes, the Wabash plant was a good-sized plant. Of course, American as itself was the largest company in the business. That is, exclusively. There are other companies, for example, Johns Manville. Of course, the rock wool business was only a small part of their operation, but with American, that was our insulation was the main thing.
This American rock wool had originally started out as a local company and then was bought into the...
Right. It was started by a man who had the idea, was a man by the name of Lurie, who lived up on the White House up on North Cass Street, where Dave Thacker now owns, and General Wood. Mike Lurie and General Wood were classmates at West Point. Of course, the General stayed in the Army and Mike got out, and they got together and built it up from there. Of course, the fact that General Wood was head of Sears didn't hurt when it come to getting Sears business for their installation.
What happened to Lurie then? Did he...
Lurie passed away, and I think the General has too. I don't know for sure.
But he did live here and had the active part in the business itself. Yeah. That's a rather interesting business that is peculiar to this territory due to the limestone.
That's right. Of course, as they discovered that blast furnace slag would do a better job, not only blast furnace but lead furnace slag, and even the copper smelters. Our plant in Tacoma, Washington, was run from a American Smelting and Refining Company plant. It was only a few miles away, and again, slag to them was a waste product.
You enjoyed your years as purchasing agent for American Rock Wool?
Very much.
Yeah. And you were in charge of all the plants?
All purchasing at all plants. I might throw something in that might be of interest to you. At the time we bought the Tacoma plant, it had been in operation some time, and as the cupolas build up, every so often you have to clean them, and you dump out what we would call a skull. You've probably seen them out LaGrow along the road, those big round hunks laying there. And I was given the job, we're going to have to clean up the yard and get rid of those because the other company had just let them pile up, and they didn't look good, and we wanted an attractive plant. I went out to Tacoma and asked for an analysis on the slag. And they said, how complete an analysis do you want? I said, well, I want a complete one. And this analysis they gave me was, it's indicated that in their copper slag was also traces of gold, silver, nickel, and in very small quantities. So I got the haywire idea. I wonder what happened, because I knew that some of those things didn't go into the rock wool or the mineral wool we were making. So I took a sample of a skull over, and they analyzed it and then asked me where I got it. And we ended up, instead of contracting with a barge company to load these skulls and haul them out in the ocean and dump them, we ended up loading them on gondolas and shipping them back to the refinery. The first carload that we shipped back had over $3,000 worth of gold in it.
That wouldn't be true of the
No, that's not true of a blast furnace slag.
Or you wouldn't even be using that then, I would imagine.
If the slag that we used at I don't know how much of this you want, but the slag we used at the South Plainfield, New Jersey plant came from a slag pile that was built up during the Civil War, and it was the iron that this slag was the result of was used to make cannonballs for the Union Army during the Civil War.
A rather interesting history.
Well, it was, and I was down there one day where they were digging in the bank, that was at Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and they came across an iron maul that had been used to break up the pieces of slag, or when they were working in it, and the thing weighed over 60 pounds and had 2 holes in it. Of course, the handles had been burned out, but they'd used that around the old steel mill or iron mill someplace, and it was a two-handed sledgehammer, and it was a dandy.
We come now to a rather interesting part of your career, and rather critical part of the career, when American Rockwell sells. And what is your version, and what happened to everybody that was on the in, all of a sudden found themselves on the out, didn't they?
Well, not too many. American sold to United States Gypsum, and I was offered an excellent job in Chicago, considerably more money than I was making here. I would not have been at the top of their purchasing department to start, but I would still have had all the buying for all the Rockwell plants, including their plants in Canada. 2 things gave me or helped me make my decision what to do about it. Number one, by this time I had really, you might say, fallen in love with Wabash. Number two, I had visited their office any number of times and worked with them, and I couldn't see the rat race in Chicago. My friends were here, people that we love are here, and the fellows who wanted to move to Chicago were given very good jobs. Most of them went up there and died, but then it's a rat race.
Was this what year was this?
1958.
58. You would have been 53 years old then. Did you feel like that you had to find another career, or what were you going to do?
I wasn't particularly concerned. I'd been offered a couple other jobs, and I sort of had my pick of 3 jobs, so I wasn't concerned about what I was going to do. I pretty much wanted to stay in purchasing if I could.
What did you do then in 58?
I went out with Crown Tool, which was a part of Wabash Magnetics, as vice president in charge of purchasing and sales, and I stayed there a couple of years until they had decided they were going to sell it, and I left there and went back into the Rockwell business on a consulting basis for a while.
And then finally doing what after the consulting?
But I finally decided I'd rather spend more time at home than being gone all the time, so I came back and worked on, went into some real estate, and then finally back into purchasing with Wabash Smelting.
So that brings your career
pretty much up to date.
Right up to date, yeah. We'll skip back now. We're going to go back and we'll go on to family and wife and children and so forth. But before we do that, I always like to ask my respondents about the Depression from 29 or from 33, depending on when it affected you or whether it affected you at all.
Well, it affected me because at that time I was with the utility company, and with the Depression, people were not paying their light bills quite as often they had, and we had to take a couple reductions in salary. I know that we took some 10% cuts in salary, and incidentally, when those were replaced when this thing got over. We just got a 10% increase. We didn't get the 10% back. If you know what I mean. If you were making $100 a week, you got cut $10.
Right.
But when you got it back, you only got $9 back.
Yeah.
But I had a steady job all during the Depression. Wasn't making any money to speak of, but we managed to get by. We had friends, and one week we'd meet with them and have popcorn at our house, and the next week we'd go over to their house and have some popcorn. Of course, we didn't have television to watch every night. We had to entertain ourselves.
Then you really, during the Depression, you never missed a paycheck.
I never missed a paycheck. Oh.
How about another interesting question I like to ask is, the Ku Klux Klan was active through here in the 20s. Did you come across it, asked to join?
I was never asked to join. I never knew it, and to my knowledge, I've never known anybody that did belong to it.
Yeah. How about, how did you meet your wife? First of all, we'd better find out what her maiden name was, and then you can tell us the story.
Her maiden name was Marion Eloise Miller.
From where?
Fort Wayne.
And tell me how you met her.
I met her at a New Year's party, and she was going steady with a fellow at the time, and I decided I liked her, and I started to work cutting him out, and finally succeeded.
What year did you get married?
1926, July the 18th.
And children?
Have a son and one daughter.
Names?
My son's name is David, and my daughter's name is Natalie.
And what did they do? And briefly give me what they're...
Well, of course, they both graduated from Wabash High School. My son had decided he wanted to go to Purdue, and I took a business trip to American Rockwell, and while we were east, I said, we'll go down and visit my cousin in New Jersey and go fishing, and they said, look, Dad, he says, as long as we're going from Washington up to New Jersey, why don't we go through Annapolis? He said, Mother would like to see. It's very historical, according to Matt. And he was interested in math in high school, and while we were touring the academy there at Annapolis and looking at the state capitol building, why, he walked in one of the classrooms, and there was some sort of a complicated mathematical problem on the board, and he had to sit down and copy it, and he came home and decided to try for it, and he took a competitive exam and won the appointment. Graduated in the upper 10% of the class, and was assigned to a heavy cruiser, and then came back and applied for and was accepted to Admiral Rickover's nuclear power program, and took that training. And I don't know how far you want to go and want that brought up to date or not.
This is all going to be your history.
He brought that. He came back, finished his nuclear power training, and served on about 3 different submarines in different capacities, engineering officer and so forth. Finally went to the USS Jack as executive officer, and from executive officer he went to executive officer on one of the Polaris submarines, then back to the Jack as commanding officer. At the present time he's a full captain, and he's stationed in Pearl Harbor, has charge of personnel. He's on the Admiral's staff, has charge of all personnel on all submarines in the Pacific Fleet. My daughter graduated from Indiana University with a degree in elementary education, and like a lot of girls, she never used it for teaching, except for a few weeks when she substituted here in Wabash after she graduated. She married a classmate of my son's. He's a commander in the Navy, and they're living also in Hawaii.
At Pearl Harbor?
Well, they live at, they're both stationed at Pearl Harbor. Dave lives in Honolulu and Natalie lives in Kailua.
That makes it real nice.
Well, it's first time for years that they've been that close together.
Were you always active in the church, Red?
Pretty much so. I've served here as a deacon and an elder and a trustee
At the Presbyterian
Church.
When did you first meet Mark Honeywell?
I think I met him about a week after I moved down here in 1945.
What were the circumstances surrounding that?
We just moved in, and where we live, and of course, as you know, we live right across the road from the country club. And as a welcome to Wabash, somebody had set my barn on, a big barn that I had, really a riding stable. It had box line, or stalls that were line paneled and all that, real fancy. Somebody set it on fire the night before I moved in, and Mr. Honeywell, being quite neighborly, had been out to the country club that was just being set up then, and he stopped in to say hello and see what had happened, and I got acquainted with him then, and our acquaintance continued mostly through the activity at the country club, and I was working on the house committee.
Tell me about some of the incidents and relationships that you and old Mark had.
Well, he's, you might call him a character. I've always thought that somebody ought to write an article for Reader's Digest as most unforgettable character I ever knew. In my estimation, he was a real fine gentleman. Bullheaded, stubborn, but I think the fact that the things that he's done for Wabash indicated a deep love of Wabash. It had to be that. But so many people found him hard to get along with because they want to do something, and it was his money and their idea, and I think there's where he's got his reputation for stubbornness. I didn't find him that way. I found him to be most agreeable when you could sit down and instead of trying to take him for something, let him show what he could do for somebody. He was more than willing to go along with you. He's very thoughtful man. As a small example of it, at the time this happened, I was raising some Springer Spaniels, and one of the pups got out along the edge of the road, and I didn't see it happen. But Mr. Honeywell came in, and Mark came in and said, "Did you know you just lost one of your pups?" And I said, "No." Well, he said the pup was walking along the edge of the road. He wasn't on the pavement, and he said some smart aleck came along and swung off the pavement and hit him. He said, "I want to tell you." He said, "I'll go out with you and we'll get him." And he went with me out to the road to pick up the pup which had been killed. A great many people wouldn't have taken time to do something like that. But, and he was, he enjoyed a good argument, discussing pros and cons. I think when I first knew him, I thought he was awfully stubborn, but as I got to know him better, I think a lot of it was the fact that it was, what you call today, sort of a brainstorming session. Instead of pick things apart, and you finally came up with a better answer than just saying, "Well, let's do it this way."
Did you ever see him get mad about anything?
Oh, I've seen him get what you might call a little riled over things, but not completely blow up. It depends what you call mad, you know. I've seen him get, let's say, quite disturbed, but I've never seen him actually throw a temper tantrum or anything like that.
Did you ever see Mr. Honeywell in a humorous vein or incident?
Oh, he enjoyed a good joke. He enjoyed a good joke. I remember one time we were having septic tank trouble, and we decided to have the septic tank. Well, we had it drained, and we got in an argument of how to fix the septic tank at the country club, and we ended up, all of us, crawling down in it. And when he crawled out, he mentioned that he thought maybe he'd better go in and use the restroom, and hell, the rest of us were still in there. So. but he was he was a hard man, because I can understand. I think he's like anyone that is well-to-do. It is quite a problem to somebody's out to touch you for something all the time. Of course, I'm no better than the rest of them, because I touched him several times the year I was president of the country club, and he was always more than happy to cooperate with anything. Very particular, very. He was a perfectionist, what I would call perfectionist. He'd, gosh, everything. When something was built, it had to be just so. It was no. He did not. He did not believe in sloppy work or anything like that.
Did Mr. Honeywell, was he still pretty active in the country club, Red, when you were on the board, president?
Yeah, he was. He had, well, when the year I was president, he had started to slow down his activity considerably. But in the first years, around from 45 on, when the club was just getting started, he was extremely active. And I don't think anyone knows the hours and the money that he spent, even after the club was organized, to have things the way he felt they should be for the city of Wabash. In fact, I felt that, I feel that the majority of people in Wabash and in the community have never realized what it has meant to the community to have a man like Mark Honeywell do the things he has. And for that matter, the things that he has made possible through the memorial building and through the Honeywell Foundation. It's just, go to any other town in the state or in the Midwest, and you won't find anything at all like it.
Do you think Mr. Honeywell ever got the recognition from the community that he should have for this activity?
No, I don't. I know I've heard criticism, well, why didn't he do this, or why didn't he do that, or why didn't he do this? But I don't, the things that he did do for the community, and it's almost unbelievable, and I don't think anyone will ever know. And I know that there's been a lot of times that he did things that to help people out that nobody knows about it. There wasn't a big piece in the paper about it or anything like that, but it's just the little things that he did, and I know that he did things at the club. Say, well, this should be done or that should be done. Well, will you take care of it, Red, and let me know how much it is. And that was it. He didn't want anybody to know. And I don't think if you just, to me it's just almost unbelievable that the things that the man did for the town, and I don't think the memorial building, a lot of people say, oh, he just wanted to build a memorial to himself. I don't think it was that at all. I think it was this was home. This was home.
Do you think that the community should have named a street or a school or park for him or something?
I think that would be would have been the least they could do. He was one of the even if he hadn't did anything for the city, of the many things that he did do. The fact that he had built up a company the size of Honeywell Incorporated, and through his ability to organize things, and certainly he was one of the outstanding industrialists in the country. And the fact that he put the garden out there, he got the, you just go on and on. You got the swimming pool through the foundation, the memorial building, the country club, the Honeywell Gardens. Other towns don't have those things.
Yeah.
And other towns have some people that are extremely wealthy too.
To your knowledge, did you find Honeywell competitive as far as looking for employees and that, as you being in management with the Rockwell industry?
I think so. And I think that Honeywell's would be was and is a fine place to work, because I don't think they had the turnover that some of the other plants had.
Did you have a big turnover?
Ours wasn't so as big as some companies at American. Of course, ours is a little different type of work. I don't know what your experience has been with Rockwell, but it's a little itchy in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And if you work on the end where the product was finished, it was itchy. And if you worked up on the cupola end, when you were charging those cupolas, and those furnaces the cupolas were pretty hot.
How about labor relations? How did you look as one businessman looking at another relative to your labor relations and their labor relations?
They were good. Our relations between them, and I think the labor relations that we had with our employees and theirs, we were, I would say, on a parallel with them.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Rockwell plant at that time I don't think was Union, nor was Honeywell. I think most of the years that you were at.
Right.
Let's jump around some other things. What would you say was the high point of your life, the greatest accomplishment that you think that you had during your life?
Gee, that's hard to say. I suppose maybe the high point of my life was getting married. That's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Good, good. How about the biggest disappointment?
Oh, gee, I don't know. Perhaps when American was sold to U.S. Gypsum, and because frankly we had an excellent retirement program, second to none in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing that U.S. Gypsum threw out.
Mm-hmm.
And I only had not too many more years to go to retire. I don't know if that was the biggest disappointment. Maybe that, or maybe getting eliminated in the Olympic tryouts in '32 was pretty much of a disappointment to me.
Tell me about that.
Oh, I was wrestling in trying to make the Olympic team, and I got up to semifinals, and wrestling a boy by the name of Hall from Ohio State, and he managed to crack 3 ribs for me, and I still think I pinned him because we held up the whole tournament. The referee awarded the match to me because I had turned him over, and one of the ring judges insisted that my shoulders had touched, and in Olympic rules you go by rolling falls. Mm-hmm. If in one continued movement, just as quick as a snap of your fingers, your one shoulder touches, then the other one. And we tried to prove it was impossible, but the Olympic rules said that the ring judge could overrule the referee. The referee happened to be Coach Tom from Indiana University at that time.
You would have been on the Olympic team, or did this man go?
I think I might have. I don't know whether I got a gold medal, but I'd sure give it a good try.
That would be a disappointment. How about your health? Tell me, Tell me about yourself, generally, your health and so forth.
My health's been very good up till January 1973.
What happened?
Oh, I went out to Hawaii for Christmas and managed to have a coronary.
What were tell me the symptoms and what happened and the circumstances.
I don't think there's any symptoms, George. We were sitting around and somebody suggested after all it was midnight, and if we were going to get up early and they had 2-3 places to see the next day before we caught the plane for home, we had our bag packed ready to come home, and since it was midnight, maybe it'd be a good idea if we all go to bed. And I got up and got as far as the bedroom door, and it hit me.
Knock you out?
No, it didn't knock me out. I managed to get on into the bedroom and get in bed, sit down on the edge of the bed, and my wife came in and said, "What's the matter?" And I just shook my head and I said, "I'm sick." And they said, "Come on, you're going to the hospital," and away we went.
It just hit you that fast.
Yeah.
Good health all day,
Huh?
and good health all day, and
Good health all day, and when I went in, I got as far as the bedroom door, and it was just like I'd walked into a solid wall, and there was a truck back of me pushed against my chest. Just felt like I was being crushed.
Did they know you were having a heart attack or suspected?
No, they didn't know what it was. But I'd felt good all day, and in fact, I hadn't been doing anything strenuous.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
I was in the hospital a little over a month. Then I stayed over another 2 months trying to get my strength back.
Yeah.
But that is the second time in my whole life that I've ever been in the hospital.
Isn't that amazing?
Huh?
Isn't that amazing?
I've had things happen. I've had, as I mentioned in wrestling, I had some ribs broken, and I had an ankle broken, and I had both shoulders cracked. But those are things you don't have to go to the hospital for. You go to the doctor's office, and other than that, never been in one.
As you look back, what are your reflections at your age that have changed from your younger years?
In what respect?
Anything.
Oh,
The way the world's going, or one-way traffic.
I'm concerned. I'm glad I lived when I did. I've lived when I have, in the period I have. I think in years to come we'll see a lot of as many changes probably in the next 50 years as we've seen in the past 50 years. I don't like the way things are going. I'm not particularly enthused. In fact, I detest rock music. I'm not particularly interested in long-haired boys when you have to look to see which way they button their coats to find out whether it's a boy or a girl. The thing that bothers me probably more than anything else, George, is the attitude of the younger generation, and I'm going down to school age, as to work. Nobody wants to work anymore. Everybody wants to do as least as they can. Let's let the government take care of it. And by golly, that's not what made this country what it is. That concerns me as much as anything else. Of course, you have things like Watergate, and I think perhaps that's well overrated. That's been going on for years, but it just happened somebody got caught at the wrong time.
Would you think that 50 years from now, someone listening to this tape would have to go to a history book to find a line on Watergate? I would think so.
I think they probably will. I think it's one of those things that will be forgotten about. How many kids today in school today, if you ask them even today, and you said years from now, how many kids today, if you said something about the Teapot Dome scandal, wouldn't know what you was talking about?
Right.
In fact, until they brought it up at Watergate, I had almost forgotten there was such a thing.
Right. Very true.
But I suppose that sort of thing will have with us always this But I can't see this wife switching and some of the other things, and some of the civil rights things, just busing children. I can't. A lot of those things I can't see. I think you have to earn your way, and you don't earn it by somebody's passed a law and giving it to you.
Would you say that government is too big, too centralized, or?
Well, it's hard to say whether it's too big or not, but we've brought it on ourselves. The states don't do it. The county doesn't do it. The county or city goes to the state, and the state goes to the federal government, and the federal government comes back and says, we'll do it, but it takes 15, well, I won't say 15, I'm just exaggerating probably, but how many people does it take in Washington to do what job that the people who actually needed it back here at home could have done, because they're going to have to pay for it anyway? In my way of thinking, I think the government is, we're becoming too near a socialistic government.
Do you think maybe we've given this form of democracy a pretty good ride for 200 years almost?
Oh, I think...
And we're ready for a new form?
Well, I don't know. We've had it for about 200 years. I don't know of any country in the world that has the living conditions, the roads, the streets, the automobiles, the TVs, you name it, we've got it.
Do you think that's all good, though?
Well, yeah, it's good. It's good to this, but I think that somebody's got to keep working to keep it that way, though. And you're not going to keep it that way if you expect somebody in Washington or the government to subsidize everything. I think it just keeps wrapping itself up tighter and tighter and tighter.
I'll be darned. Was George Martin at American Rockwell when you were?
George was with American. He was treasurer when I first came with American.
And he would have died a few years after.
He died. He died while he was still treasurer. I think George. See, I don't remember. I'd only been there about. I expect George died probably around 1950.
Was he good? I don't know what type of individual was he. I didn't know him.
Oh, George was a real fine gentleman. A regular, what you call a regular fella. He just was one of the gang. I've never seen the company where the management group were as closely knit as they were at American. Everybody's with everybody else, very close.
Did you enjoy that association?
Very much.
When did you join Rotary?
I am not sure whether it was, I think it was early in 46. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it is. Who were active in those days?
Otto Swan, Frank Plummer. Shortly after that, Holton Ford came back from Hamilton, Ohio. Art Grabner was in. Not too many of the group that were in then.
That are still active, huh?
They're still active.
You enjoyed that association?
Very much.
And you were president what year?
I was president the year we started the senior party.
I think it's been great. I have enjoyed the Rotary Association probably as much as anything I've done.
I think that something like that a club like Rotary is a really important cog in the function of a community. We do a lot of good. We could do a lot more good than we could.
I think that a man gets as much out of it though as the community does. I think you get as much out of it than...
I think that you get sort of interest on your effort. In other words, if you go to Rotary and eat lunch and run, all you've got's a full belly out of it, which is gone in 3-4 hours. But if you put something into it, for the effort that you do put into Rotary, I think you get more in return on it. I sincerely feel that way about it.
Anything else you'd like to say to your great-grandchildren? Unborn, yet unborn?
Yet unborn, I hope, with my grandchildren being 14.
Yeah.
I can't think of a thing, George.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Red, for this interview this afternoon, and it's a beautiful day in Wabash. And,
Beautiful day in Wabash.
this is
Any day's beautiful.
George Dingle, my interviewer.